4:00 p.m. Exactly. The conference room door clicked shut behind me. The sound echoed in the small space, cold, final, like a vault ceiling. He didn't even stand. No HR representative sitting beside him. No witness to make this official. Just Austin Keating, my boss of 2 years, sitting there with a manila folder centered perfectly on the polished table. "We're letting you go," he said. His voice was flat, rehearsed, like he'd practiced this in the mirror. "It's been decided." I stared at the man I'd protected for 2 years. The man whose lies I'd covered with my silence, whose crimes I'd watched unfold in spreadsheets and invoices, whose fraud I'd documented in meticulous detail. My hands clenched on the leather armrests of the chair. My jaw tightened until my teeth ached. My heart hammered against my ribs. But I said absolutely nothing. Because I knew something he didn't. The Department of Justice was set to arrive in exactly 5 minutes. I'd confirmed it myself that morning from a burner phone I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Called the agent's secure line. Asked the question I'd been asking for weeks. "Are we still on for today?" Agent Wallace had answered immediately. 4:05, on the dot, we'll be there. So I sat there now, calm on the surface, silent, still. Let Keating think he'd won. "You can clean out your desk tomorrow morning," he continued, pushing the folder toward me with 2 fingers. "Security will escort you out of the building today. Standard protocol." I looked down at the folder. Severance agreement. 2 weeks' pay. Signed and dated. He'd planned this. Timed it. Probably felt clever doing it on a Friday afternoon. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Keating," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Just a fraction. He'd expected tears? Arguments? Maybe even begging. I'd seen him fire people before. He enjoyed their desperation. Not compliance, not calm acceptance. I stood, picked up the folder, and walked toward the door. "My name is Colleen Braddock. I'm 34 years old. I've worked in corporate operations for 12 years. And the day my boss fired me was the same day his crimes walked through the front door, wearing a navy blue suit and a federal badge. I just had to wait 5 more minutes. I didn't argue, didn't ask why, didn't defend myself or list my accomplishments or beg for a second chance. I simply said, "I understand," and walked out of that conference room with my head high. The office was eerily silent as I passed through. It was late Friday afternoon, but enough people remained at their desks to notice. They looked up from their computers, some with sympathy in their eyes, others with that guilty relief that comes from watching someone else get fired instead of you. Janet from accounting gave me a sad smile. Paulo from IT looked away quickly. The new intern, whose name I'd never learned, stared openly. I ignored them all. Walked to my desk in the operations department like this was any other normal Tuesday. Like I hadn't just been terminated. Like my entire professional life hadn't just been upended. I sat down in my ergonomic chair, the one I'd bought myself because the company issued ones hurt my back. Opened my email one last time, started systematically deleting personal bookmarks from my browser. The clock on my computer screen read 4:03 p.m. 2 minutes. I could hear Keating through his office walls, thin, supposedly soundproof but actually useless. He was on the phone. His voice was muffled but urgent, probably calling his lawyer, or his accountant, or his brother-in-law who helped him set up the shell companies, or whoever else was in on the scheme to hide $14 million in fraudulent billing. My desk was already mostly clean. I'd been preparing for this day for weeks. Personal items packed, important contacts backed up, nothing incriminating left behind. Then I heard it, the elevator ding. That distinctive sound that meant someone had arrived on our floor. I looked up slowly, casually, like I was just checking who was coming. 4 people stepped out into the reception area. 2 men, 2 women, all wearing dark suits that screamed federal authority. All with badges clipped to their belts. The kind you can't fake, the kind that open doors and close cases. The lead agent, a tall black man with gray at his temples, scanned the office with practiced efficiency. His eyes swept across the desks, the cubicles, the closed office doors. Then they landed on the reception desk where Vanessa sat, her face already going pale because she could sense what was about to happen. "We're here to speak with a Mr. Austin Keating," the agent said clearly. His voice carried across the entire floor. Everyone could hear. "Is he available?" Vanessa's hands trembled as she reached for the phone. I'll get him for you. I kept my expression carefully neutral, packed my laptop charger into my bag slowly, deliberately, like I had all the time in the world. Keating emerged from his office. He looked confused at first, then annoyed, that default expression he wore when things didn't go according to his plan. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice sharp with irritation. The lead agent pulled out his badge, held it up. "Austin Keating? I'm Agent Wallace, Department of Justice. We have a warrant for your arrest. We need you to come with us, now." The office went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I slung my bag over my shoulder, stood up, and walked toward the elevator without looking back. 6 months earlier, on a rainy Tuesday in March, I'd noticed something was off. I was doing my usual quarterly reconciliation, matching our financial reports against actual contract deliverables. Boring work, tedious, but necessary. That's when I saw it. The numbers didn't match. Not by a little, by a lot. A contract with Apex Consulting showed we'd paid them $340,000 for strategic advisory services. But when I pulled the actual deliverables folder, it was empty. No reports, no presentations, no meeting notes, nothing. I thought it was a mistake at first, a filing error. Maybe someone had forgotten to upload the documents. So I checked another one, Vertex Solutions, $280,000 for market analysis. Again, no deliverables. Then another. Summit Strategic Group, $420,000 for operational consulting. Empty folder. I started pulling vendor invoices, cross-referencing addresses, running searches. That's when I discovered something strange. 3 of these consulting firms were registered at the same address. A mailbox rental place in Delaware, same phone number prefix, same billing format, same vague service descriptions, different company names, services billed but never actually rendered. Contracts inflated by 20, sometimes 30% over market rates. All approved personally by Austin Keating. I sat at my desk, staring at the spreadsheet, my stomach sinking. This wasn't a mistake. This was fraud. I printed the documents, put them in a folder, labeled it clearly. Then I walked to Keating's office, my hands slightly shaking. His door was open. He was typing an email, frowning at his screen. "Mr. Keating," I said, knocking on the doorframe. "I think there's an error in the vendor accounts. Could I show you something?" He didn't look up. "What kind of error?" I stepped inside, setting the folder on his desk. "Some of these consulting companies are billing us for services we never received. I can't find any deliverables, and when I checked the addresses..." Now he looked up. His expression shifted. Not concerned, not curious, annoyed. "Colleen," he interrupted, "you're in operations, not accounting. That's not your department." "I know, sir, but this could be significant. If we're paying for services we're not receiving." "Stay in your lane," he said sharply. His eyes locked onto mine, cold, hard. "This isn't your concern." "But sir, if there's fraud, your lane, Colleen, find it, stay in it." I stood there for a moment. The folder sat between us on his desk like evidence at a crime scene. "Understood," I said quietly. I left his office without the folder. He kept it. And that night, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of wine I didn't drink, I started keeping my own copies. Quietly, carefully. Because I realized something important. If he was willing to kill a conversation that quickly, there was something bigger here. Something he was desperate to hide. A month later, during a routine client call, everything escalated. We were on a video conference with Barrington Industries, one of our largest accounts. Keating was presenting our quarterly progress update. I was there to take notes and provide operational details if needed. He was in the middle of explaining our timeline for Phase 2 implementation when he said, "We'll have that completed by end of Q2. I knew immediately that was wrong. Phase 2 required 6 months minimum. We were already in Q1. End of Q2 was impossible. I waited for him to correct himself. He didn't. The client, a woman named Patricia, frowned. "That seems aggressive. Are you sure that timeline is feasible?" "Absolutely," Keating said confidently. "We have the resources allocated." We didn't. I'd reviewed the resource allocation myself yesterday. I made a decision, a stupid one, maybe, but I couldn't let him lie directly to the client. "Actually," I interrupted gently, "our current timeline shows Phase 2 completion by end of Q3. We could potentially accelerate certain components, but Q2 would require additional resources we haven't budgeted for." The silence on the call was deafening. Patricia nodded slowly. Q3 makes more sense based on scope. Thank you for the clarification. We finished the call. Keating smiled, thanked the client, ended the video conference professionally. Then he waited exactly 30 seconds after the screen went black. Colleen, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Step outside. I followed him out of the conference room. My heart was already racing because I knew what was coming. He walked me down the hallway, away from other offices, into a corner by the printer room where no one could hear. Then he turned on me. Don't you ever contradict me in front of a client again. His face was red now, actually red, veins visible in his neck and forehead. I was just clarifying the timeline. I don't care what you think you were doing. You made me look incompetent. You embarrassed me, in front of a major client. That wasn't my intention. The timeline you gave was incorrect. You don't get to decide what's correct. He stepped closer. I could smell coffee on his breath. You're a glorified secretary, Colleen. That's it. You take notes, you schedule meetings, you format documents, you don't think, you don't question, you don't make decisions, you execute what I tell you to execute. Do you understand me? I understood perfectly. I understood that he was scared that I was getting too close to something, scared that I was paying too much attention, scared that I might start asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. Yes, sir, I said quietly, looking him directly in the eyes. I understand completely. He stared at me for another moment. Then he walked away, his dress shoes clicking sharply on the tile floor. I stood there for a full minute. Then I went back to my desk, opened my encrypted cloud folder, the one I'd created specifically for this, and added a new document. I titled it, Timeline of Hostile Behavior. Date, time, witnesses present, exact quotes as I remembered them. I documented everything, because I realized something important that day. Austin Keating wasn't just a fraudster, he was also a bully. And bullies always make mistakes when they're scared. 2 weeks after the client call incident, Keating crossed a new line. He called me into his office late on a Thursday afternoon. Most people had already left for the day. The office was quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the cleaning crew vacuuming in the distance. Close the door, he said. I did, my stomach already twisting. He slid a paper across his desk. An expense report. I recognized the format immediately, our standard reimbursement form for business expenses. I need you to reword this, he said casually, like he was asking me to proofread an email. I picked up the document, scanned it. It was a payout to a consulting firm called Meridian Strategic Partners. $50,000. The description read, Advisory Services for Q1 Restructuring Initiative, but the phrasing was deliberately vague. Too vague, the kind of vague that meant something was being hidden. What specifically would you like me to change? I asked carefully. Just make it sound more official, less specific about the actual services. My blood ran cold. He wasn't asking me to edit, he was asking me to obscure. I'm not comfortable with that, Mr. Keating. He looked up from his computer, smiled. Not comfortable with what? With rewording this to make it less specific. That would be misleading. Misleading? He laughed. Actually laughed, like I'd told a joke. Colleen, this is business. Sometimes we have to be creative with language, that's all I'm asking. A little creative rewording. This isn't creative language. This would be deliberately hiding what the payment was actually for. You're being dramatic. I'm being accurate. If we can't properly describe what a payment was for, we shouldn't be making the payment. His smile vanished. You know what your problem is, Colleen? You think too small. You don't understand how business actually works at this level. I understand fraud when I see it. The word hung in the air between us. Fraud. I'd said it out loud. Keating stood up slowly, leaned forward with both hands on his desk. You're replaceable, he said, his voice low and cold. Do you understand that? There are 50 people who could do your job, 50 people who would be grateful for the opportunity, who wouldn't question, who would just do what they're told. I set the expense report back on his desk. Then maybe you should replace me, I said. I turned and walked out of his office before he could respond. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to sit in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive home. That night, I started printing hard copies of everything. Bank statements I'd obtained through a contact in accounting, vendor contracts with suspicious terms, email chains discussing payments, invoice after invoice after invoice. I printed it all, organized it in binders, labeled everything clearly with dates and document numbers. Then I uploaded digital copies to 3 separate cloud storage accounts. Because I realized something, I was no longer just collecting evidence. I was preparing for war. You might be wondering why I didn't just quit. Walk away, find another job, leave the fraud for someone else to discover. The answer is complicated and also heartbreakingly simple. My mom had been diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer 8 months before I started noticing the vendor discrepancies. Aggressive, fast-moving, the kind of cancer that requires immediate, intensive, expensive treatment. She lived 3 states away in the small town where I grew up. My sister and I took turns flying out to stay with her during her worst treatment cycles. The medical bills were crushing. Even with her Medicare and supplemental insurance, the out-of-pocket costs were astronomical. I was helping cover some of those costs. My paycheck, my insurance, my stability, they mattered. If I quit, I'd lose my health insurance, I'd lose my steady income, I'd lose the ability to help my mom when she needed it most. So I stayed. And I swallowed my pride every single day. Smiled when Keating made condescending comments, said yes sir when he gave me menial tasks, pretended not to notice when he took credit for my work. But I also built something he didn't know about, a quiet, comprehensive archive of his crimes. Every email forwarded to a personal account. Every invoice scanned and saved, every contract photographed. I organized it meticulously, created spreadsheets tracking patterns, built timelines showing escalation, because I knew that eventually this situation would resolve itself one way or another. Either Keating would fire me, or I would help take him down. And when that moment came, I was going to be ready. My mom recovered, thankfully. After 15 months of treatment, her latest scans came back clear. But by then, I was already too deep into the investigation to walk away. This wasn't about the job anymore. This was about justice. The real turning point came on a Wednesday in September. I received a routine email from the U.S. General Services Administration, a standard quarterly inquiry about vendor compliance and minority-owned business utilization. Every company that worked with federal contracts got these. Usually, they went straight to our compliance department, but this one had been sent to the General Operations inbox, which I monitored. The questionnaire was simple. 3 basic questions about our vendor relationships and compliance procedures. I was supposed to forward it to Keating. That was protocol. But I didn't. Instead, I opened a reply, and I answered their 3 questions, honestly. Question 1. Does your organization maintain updated records of all vendor relationships? My answer, we maintain records. But recent audits have revealed inconsistencies in vendor documentation. Question 2. Are all vendor payments properly documented with corresponding deliverables? My answer, no. Multiple high-value payments lack documented deliverables or verification of services rendered. Question 3. Has your organization identified any compliance concerns in the past year? My answer, yes. Significant concerns regarding vendor authenticity and payment authorization. I read my responses 3 times. This was the line. Once I crossed it, there was no going back. I hit send. Then I closed my email and went back to work like nothing had happened. 2 days later, I received a response. Not 3 questions this time. 20. Specific, detailed questions about vendors, payment amounts, authorization procedures, and oversight mechanisms. I sat at my desk staring at the email, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it, the moment I had to choose. Stay silent and complicit, or become a whistleblower. I glanced at Keating's office. Through his window, I could see him on a phone call, laughing about something. I thought about my mom. About Taylor, the woman who'd been fired before me. About all the people Keating had probably manipulated and destroyed. I opened a reply and typed, I'll answer anything you need to know. But I need this to be off the record, and I need protection if this goes further. My finger hovered over the send button for 10 full seconds, then I pressed it. The response came in less than an hour. We can arrange that. A field agent will contact you to set up a secure meeting. I logged out of my email, walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and for the first time in months, I let myself cry. A week after I sent that email, Keating held a quarterly board meeting. I wasn't invited, I never was. Executive staff only, but I heard about what happened from Janet in accounting, who'd been asked to prepare some financial slides for the presentation. Keating presented a new client retention strategy. According to Janet, he stood at the front of the boardroom with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, clicking through a PowerPoint that outlined a comprehensive approach to reducing client churn. The board members were impressed. They asked questions, took notes, congratulated him on his innovative thinking and strategic vision. Here's what made me sick. That entire presentation was my work. I'd spent 3 months developing that strategy, researched industry trends, analyzed our client data, conducted surveys, built predictive models. I'd compiled everything into a detailed proposal, sent it to Keating for review, and he'd taken it, changed the formatting, added his name, removed mine completely, then presented it as his own brilliant idea. Janet told me all of this over coffee, her voice sympathetic. I thought you should know. Everyone was talking about how smart he is. How lucky we are to have his leadership. It's fine, I told her. But it wasn't fine. I went back to my desk, opened my files, found the original strategy document, the one with my name in the metadata, the one with timestamps showing I'd created it months before Keating's presentation. And I sent it to the company's legal department. By accident, of course. Just a misfiled email attachment meant for someone else. Oops, sorry, I wrote in a follow-up. Please disregard the previous attachment, but they'd already seen it, and they'd seen the metadata. They never said anything publicly. No confrontation, no investigation. But 2 days later I was walking past the legal department's office and heard Keating's voice. He was in there, behind closed doors. His tone was defensive, urgent. I kept walking, but I knew, he knew that I knew, and now he was watching me. The next morning I found a new lock on the storage room where we kept old vendor files. The code had been changed, only senior management had access now. I smiled when I saw it. Because Keating didn't realize that I'd already photographed every document in that room 2 months ago. He was locking an empty barn after the horse had already escaped. I learned I wasn't the first person to discover Keating's fraud. 3 months into my employment, before I'd started investigating, I'd run into a woman at the coffee shop near my apartment. Her name was Taylor Hendricks. She was sitting alone at a corner table, working on her laptop. I'd ordered my usual latte and was waiting when I noticed the company logo on her tote bag. The same company I worked for. Hey, I said, approaching her table. Do you work at Vanguard Systems? She looked up. Her expression was hard to read. Not quite friendly, but not unfriendly either. I used to, she said carefully. Oh, I just started there a few months ago, operations department. Something changed in her face, a flash of concern. Sit down, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat. She looked around the coffee shop like she was checking for eavesdroppers. Then she leaned forward. Who's your boss? She asked quietly. Austin Keating. She closed her laptop. You need to be careful. What do you mean? I had your job before you. I worked for Keating for 14 months. What happened? I started noticing things, numbers that didn't add up, vendors that didn't make sense. I asked questions, did some digging. And I got fired for incompetence. She made air quotes with her fingers. But it wasn't incompetence. It was because I was getting too close to something big. My stomach dropped. What was it? I never found out. I got fired before I could figure it out. But Colleen, she leaned even closer. The numbers are wrong. The vendors are fake. And when you get too close to the truth, he'll get rid of you. She pulled a business card from her wallet, her new company, a financial services firm downtown. If you ever need someone to talk to, or if you figure out what he's hiding, call me. I took the card. How do you know I'll figure it out? I asked. She smiled sadly. Because you're asking questions. Same as I did. And once you start seeing the pattern, you won't be able to stop. She was right. 6 months later, I'd uncovered everything. And now I was 3 weeks away from getting fired. Just like she had been. 2 months before my termination, something unexpected happened. Bernard Ross, our CFO, pulled me aside after a staff meeting. Bernard was quiet, nervous, the kind of man who always looked like he was worried about something. He sweated a lot, even in air-conditioned rooms. He avoided eye contact, but he was also meticulous. detail-oriented, the kind of CFO who noticed when numbers were off. "Colleen," he said, his voice low. "Do you have a minute?" "Sure." He glanced around. We were in the hallway. People were passing by. "Not here. Follow me." We walked to an empty conference room. He closed the door, didn't sit down. "Have you noticed any unusual vendor activity lately?" he asked. I chose my words carefully. "What kind of unusual activity?" "Payments to companies we don't have contracts with. Invoices that don't match our systems. That kind of thing." My heart started beating faster. "Have you?" He didn't answer directly, but his face said everything. His jaw was tight, his hands were clenched, his eyes darted to the door like he was afraid someone might walk in. "I can't say anything officially," he said quietly. "But if you've noticed anything, if you've documented anything, keep it safe." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone needs to know, and I think..." He paused, swallowed hard. "I think you're already asking the right questions." "Are you involved?" I asked bluntly. "No, but I'm scared, and I can't do anything without proof." "I might have proof." His eyes widened. "Then you need to be very careful. Keating is connected, more connected than you realize." "Connected how?" "Just be careful." He left the conference room first. I stood there for a moment, processing. The CFO knew, the CFO was scared, and the CFO was giving me permission, tacit, unofficial permission, to keep digging. That conversation changed everything, because it confirmed I wasn't crazy, I wasn't imagining things. The fraud was real, and people inside the company knew about it. 2 weeks before my firing, they moved me. It happened on a Monday morning. I arrived at my usual desk to find a note from HR. "Please report to Office 4B for your new workspace assignment." Office 4B was in the back corner of the building. No windows, no nearby colleagues, just a small room with a desk, a chair, and a filing cabinet. "Restructuring," the HR manager explained when I asked. Her name was Patricia. She looked uncomfortable. "We're reorganizing departments for better workflow efficiency." "I'm the only one being reorganized?" "For now. Others will follow." They wouldn't. I knew that. This wasn't restructuring. This was isolation. They were boxing me in, making me invisible, removing me from the daily flow of office interaction, hoping I'd get frustrated and quit. But I didn't quit. I moved my things to the small office, set up my computer, organized my desk, and I kept working, kept documenting, kept preparing. Because what they didn't know, what Keating and HR and whoever else was orchestrating this didn't know, was that I was already 3 steps ahead. I'd been meeting with Agent Wallace twice a month for the past 6 weeks, handing over documents, explaining the fraud scheme, connecting dots. They were building a federal case, and I was the key witness. The isolated office actually helped. No one could see what I was working on anymore. No one could look over my shoulder or ask what I was printing. I had privacy now. They thought they were cornering me. They were actually giving me exactly what I needed. The agent's name was Wallace. We met at a diner 40 minutes outside the city. He ordered coffee. I ordered nothing. "Do you have evidence?" he asked. I slid a USB drive across the table. "More than you think." He pocketed it without looking. "We'll need time to verify everything, build the case properly." "How long?" "Few months, maybe less if the evidence is solid." "It is." He studied me. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it's right. Most people wouldn't risk their job." "He already wants me gone. At least this way it means something." Wallace nodded. "We'll be ready when you are. Just tell me when you're coming. We'll let you know." Out of nowhere, Keating offered me a promotion. "Senior coordinator," he said, smiling. "No raise. Just a title. It'll look good on your resume," he added. I knew what this was, a bribe. Keep me quiet, keep me compliant. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long." I never accepted. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. Keating had hired a new assistant. Young, timid, barely spoke. Her name was Claire. One day she slipped a note onto my desk. Just 3 words. "Check vendor 36A." I looked up. She was already walking away. That night, I pulled the file. Vendor 36A wasn't a vendor. It was a shell company, registered under Keating's cousin's name, billing us for services that never existed, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was it. That was the crack that opened everything. I printed every invoice, organized them chronologically, cross-referenced them with bank statements I'd obtained through a contact in accounting. The pattern was clear. Money went into 36A. Money came out to personal accounts, Keating's accounts, I labeled everything, dated it, created a timeline, then I sent it all to Agent Wallace. His response came 6 hours later. This is enough. We're moving forward. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with sticky notes and highlighters, double-checked every document, every date, every signature. At 3:12 a.m., I sent one final email to the DOJ, to the IRS, to the SE subject, evidence of ongoing fraud. Body, this should be enough to start. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop, and I waited. Monday morning, Keating called me into his office. He was smiling. Colleen, I've been thinking, you're a great worker, but I think you're too corporate for our evolving culture. Translation, you ask too many questions. We're moving in a different direction. It's not a good fit anymore. Translation, I want you gone. Termination meeting is set for Friday, 4 p.m. sharp. He handed me a folder. Severance terms, 2 weeks pay. I hope there are no hard feelings. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd stolen millions, who'd fired people for discovering the truth. No hard feelings, I said, and I meant it. Because by Friday at 4:05, he'd be in handcuffs. Friday came. I arrived at work at 8 a.m., like always. 3:50 p.m., I closed out my email, deleted personal files. 3:55 p.m., I walked past the interns, smiled at the receptionist. 4 p.m., I sat in the conference room, got fired. 4:05 p.m., the DOJ arrived. 4:07 p.m., security escorted Keating out. Not me, him. I kept walking, straight to my desk, packed my bag and left. The company tried to hide it. Press release, internal restructuring, email to staff, personnel changes. They even scrubbed Keating's name from the website. But one email leaked. A journalist got it. The headline hit the next morning. Tech CEO arrested in $14 million fraud scheme. The media piled on. The company's legal team called me, offered 6 months severance. We'd appreciate your discretion, the lawyer said. Discretion about what? About the situation. You mean the fraud? Silence. I'll need to discuss this with my attorney, I said. We're prepared to be generous. I'll need a counteroffer from the U.S. government. They hung up. Keating was arrested publicly, at a golf course. Photographers caught everything. The handcuffs, the walk to the car, his face. The headline, CEO fired whistleblower hours before arrest. Karma doesn't whisper, it broadcasts. One media outlet tried to spin it, called me disgruntled, said I had personal issues with management. I released one document. The email where Keating asked me to falsify records, timestamped, signed. They deleted the article by noon. The company lost a federal contract, $72 million. The audit found willful negligence and systematic fraud. They tried to distance themselves from Keating. Issued statements. Hired crisis PR. Too late. The damage was done. They offered me a settlement. Full year of severance. Quietly. Health insurance for 18 months. I took it. And I used it to start my own business. Ethics consulting. Compliance training. Teaching companies how not to become the next headline. Irony? Maybe. Justice? Definitely. I work for myself now. My clients are companies that actually want to do things right. I sleep at night. I answer to no one except my own standards. Sometimes I see Keating's name pop up in the news. Appeals, hearings, prison updates, and I just smile. Not because I destroyed him, but because I didn't let him destroy me. He tried to end my career for doing the right thing. The best revenge? Building a life he never imagined I could have. A life where integrity isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. And I wield it every single day.